flashback.
Yeah, what the hell, sure.
End of flashback.
The Pass the Pentagon challenge is a concept brought forth by fellow YouTuber Washtingo, and it's pretty simple. You start a save, you play its first season, you pass it on to a different creator after you're done so that they can continue the cycle. Of course, the eventual goal of this concept is to complete the Pentagon challenge. In our scenario, I'm taking over for fellow friend of the channel Smoen, who managed to get Club de Deportes Santa Cruz promoted to the Liga de Primera in Chile, their first division, along with also making a run to the Copa Chile semifinals as a second division club. But for as much potential as there is here to build Santa Cruz into a respectable team in Chile's top flight, well, the first thing I did once taking over duties as manager was to ask the board of directors for a coaching badge course. They declined.
It's time to go!
No, I do not care how solid this team looks going forward. I will not sit here and have my ass handed to me on a weekly basis by the likes of Colo-Colo, Universidad de Chile, Huachipato, O'Higgins, and everybody else in between without an actual improvement of our coaching abilities for it. Thus, it was time to hit the job market. Our options were limited, but at the same time, there were some opportunities open in certain leagues that ranked above Chile's top flight. I even took an interview with a J3 side in FC Ryukyu hoping that I could leverage a potential hire into making them promise to give us a coaching course. They did not bite, so that didn't quite work out. What did work out, however, was a different interview a week later as the players at Santa Cruz were returning to start preseason. But they would have to do that with a different manager, because after an interview and contract negotiations, we promptly packed our bags and got on the first flight to take the job at Associação Ferroviaria de Esportes. That's right! I'm taking the Pass the Pentagon challenge to Brazil. So, a big reason to take on this job does have to do with Associação Ferroviaria de Esportes, which I'll be referring to as Ferroviaria or AFI throughout the rest of this video, is due to the club having much better facilities than Santa Cruz, a little more money in their pockets, and they also are currently playing in the Campeonato Brasileiro Série A, which is the most competitive domestic league in all of South America. A good campaign here, maintaining the club in Brazil's top flight, is going to do wonders for our reputation going forward. As for the club itself, they were founded in 1950 in the city of Araraquara, São Paulo, and have established themselves as a respectable side in the interior of the state of São Paulo. Their most recent successes in real life include 2 Copa Paulista trophies in 2006 and 2017, along with bouncing in between Série B and Série C of the Campeonato Brasileiro in recent years. But in this universe, they managed to make the climb to Série A in the 2025 season, then have managed to survive relegation in 2026 by the skin of their teeth. So our job here is to keep them in Série A, but unlike Wojtinho and Smoen, I decided to take a much different tactical approach. Initially, that was through a fairly stereotypical 4-3-3 meant to directly counterattack our opponents. We definitely had the right amount of talent to run such a tactic, with the likes of fullback Cláudio Bravo, striker Elias Torres, wingers Juninho and Fábio for each side of the pitch, defensive midfielder Gustavo Coelar, center back Gustavo Medina, and many others. Of course, we would immediately go into a trial by fire as our managerial debut came in the Campeonato Paulista, where we lost 2-0 to my beloved Palmeiras, with Facundo Torres scoring a brace.
What?
Oh, right. I should probably explain the state championships concept in Brazil. In the odd case that you don't have 20 or so minutes of your time to check out this video I made on the whole concept, let me give you the abridged version. The Campeonato Paulista is the top-flight professional state football league in the Brazilian state of São Paulo. Long before Brazil ever had the infrastructure to support running a national championship like the Brasileirão, all Brazilian states and its federal district created and have been playing in their own state leagues. Among them, the Campeonato Paulista is the oldest established league in Brazil, being held since 1902 and professionally since 1933. In its current system, 16 teams play in it across 4 groups, 12 games per team where they face everyone sans the team in their own group. Top 2 in each group go to the quarterfinals. Now that we've got that out of the way, our second game in charge of Ferroviaria ended up being an intense outing, one in which Elias Torres saved our bacon with a hat-trick to help us survive with a 3-2 win on the road against Guarani. Although after this game and a rather lackluster performance in a 1-0 win against Ituano, something needed to change with our tactical approach. Plus, we are in Brazil and I wanted to play something more exciting. Thus, yeah, we're gonna do a 4-2-2 Brazilian box with my own whimsical twists on it. For example, the double pivot having a halfback to shore up the center defense and a deep line playmaker, one of the 2 attacking midfielders being a shadow striker, and having the tactic shift into a 4-4-2 when we're defending. The idea here is simple. We find ways to overwhelm our opposition on attack and to score as many goals as possible. They score 3 goals on us, we score 4 on them type of vibes. Something which we prove can be effective almost immediately with a 4-1 routing of São Bernardo, and then levy it into a series of positive results throughout the rest of the Campeonato Paulista, with our only loss in that stretch being against Corinthians, one of the big 4 in the state of São Paulo, and the personal bane of my fucking existence as a Palmeiras fan.
Salve o Corinthians, já deve mais de 2 bilhões.
Our performances with what I decided to call the Brazilian Fury box were enough to put us in the quarterfinals of the Campeonato Paulista, which was a one-legged affair against Santos. Yes, that Santos in which Pelé made a name for himself. While Santos did make it a tough affair, we also kept our composure after Juninho's goal in the 3rd minute of the game and held on to the 1-0 result to move on to the semifinals to play against São Paulo Futebol Clube, or SPFC for short. The Paulista semifinals are 2-legged affairs and we happened to shock SPFC in the first one at their own ground in the Morumbis, with Elias Torres and Marcos Astina scoring for AFE to give us the 2-1 advantage going into the second leg at our own ground, the Estádio Fonte Luminosa. But to their credit, as one of the big 4 in the state, SPFC turned the aggregate around with a 2-1 result, and we went to penalty kicks, where misses from Gustavo Medina and Fabio would cost us, as we fell to SPFC, but can still hold our heads high in an overachieving performance to get as far as we did. Also, we didn't exactly have much time to mope around with the Campeonato Brasileiro soon to start, and this is as good of a time as any to talk about 2 crucial signings we made just after the Paulista registration deadline to bolster our roster for this stage. The first signing was Tomás Pochettino from Fortaleza for 425,000 euros to help add depth to our attacking midfield, and then I splashed around 725,000 euros to our old job as Santa Cruz to bring in forward Martiniano Moreno into the fold. After all, he had already shown himself as a proven scorer at Santa Cruz during Washington and Smolens's managerial stint, and I felt he could do the same at this level too. Our first game of the Brasileirão season would be at the Maracanã against Fluminense, who did catch us flat-footed with a pair of goals from Lima within 2 minutes of each other super early in that game. But with the Brazilian Fury box, we had nothing to fear, as Wedick Popo got a goal back within minutes of Fluminense's early salvo, and in his debut for the club, Martiniano Moreno started to prove he was worth every penny we paid for him by getting the tying goal at the 40-minute mark and the eventual game winner late in the second half as we escaped Rio de Janeiro with 3 massive points to start the season in Brazil's top flight. Our home debut in the season would also go well, as we defeated Atlético Mineiro 2-1 before then facing that club's biggest rival in Cruzeiro in Minas Gerais, where we did lose 2-1 to the hosts in the process. That result against Cruzeiro, along with a sports hernia injury to one of our starters in Luis Henrique, led us to playing Pictionary for 4 games in a row, and then yet again losing to Corinthians at home to put us in a winless streak of 6 games, which we then somehow corrected at Allianz Parque against Palmeiras, beating them 3-1 and getting revenge for my debut game to wrap up the month of May. Something did awake within the club after that victory, because our rotating striker cast of Elias Torres, Martiniano Moreno, and Wedick Popo would take the wheels to carry Ferroviaria throughout the next 2 months of the season, as we proceeded to go on a 12-game unbeaten streak, which included some huge victories during that time frame against Santos, Internacional, and Vasco da Gama, alongside some tough draws versus Curitiba, Bahia, Vitória, Sport Recife, and Flamengo. But of course, it would be Cruzeiro who would end up breaking up that streak by defeating us yet again.
Well, this sucks.
However, a bounce-back victory against Grêmio to go along with the unbeaten streak now had us battling it out on the top half of the table, jockeying for position in the lower end of the Copa Libertadores and Copa Sudamericana spots. While the July transfer window opened, we then started August with a win against Botafogo, but then stumbled against São Paulo in a 2-1 loss, rescued a draw against Internacional near the end of the second half, followed by Moreno managing some late-game heroics with a stoppage time goal for us to beat Red Bull Bragantino, and then took a tough loss at home to Atlético Paranaense to wrap up August. Just as September began, we did make a signing by bringing in fullback Matheus Silva on a free transfer just to add more defensive depth, and then showcase the Brazilian Fury box's penchant for late-game heroics, as we fought back from a 3-2 deficit with 2 stoppage time goals to help us defeat Palmeiras 4-3 at Estádio Fonte Luminosa, including Martiniano Moreno scoring the best goal of the entire competition to seal our victory.
He got a bicycle! He got a bicycle from somebody who will be riding a bicycle in this arena.
That result got Ferroviaria into the top 5 of the Brasileirão table, within 5 points of the first place club at the time in Grêmio. However, what the football gods giveth, they taketh, as we were on the losing end of a 4-3 loss to Fortaleza at the Castelão over the following week. At the very least, we beat Curitiba 2-0 to wrap up September and headed towards the tail end of the Brasileirão season while staying within contention for a possible Libertadores spot. While we got the results of a very solid youth intake with some promising prospects on the horizon, our form was a mixed bag up until the end of the season, as certain teams did manage to figure us out. While we managed to yet again beat Vasco da Gama for 3 points, we were defeated by Santos 1-0, had frustrating albeit exciting draws against opponents in the northeastern part of Brazil in Bahia and Vitória, lost to Sport Recife 3-1, and then wrapped up the calendar year by losing to the Brasileirão champions in Flamengo 2-0 at the Maracanã. But the good news is that we did do just enough to end up in 8th place, Ferroviaria's highest finish in the league ever, and due to Brazil having a massive coefficient in Common Bowl, the team also earned a berth into next season's Copa Sudamericana, aka the Europa League equivalent in Common Bowl. And the club even let us go on a coaching course to earn our National C license as a treat for doing so well this season.
Let's go!
So, with a good amount of money in the club's bank, a solid roster that can score goals, and a Continental Cup on the horizon, It'll be up to whoever takes over the save on whether they will see this through or try to angle such a season into a bigger job with a team in continental competitions. But whatever happens, I'll be watching closely.